Are our current change models up to the challenge? And to a large extent, when you actually look at them, they're designed for episodic change that too often is disruptive because they're reactive. The change frameworks. In earlier work I've published, I've identified 28 different frameworks. These are for planned change, but they're not really a methodology. When you look at them, they're really a driver for success. For example, Cotter's 8 stages, he came up with 8 problems and a stage for each of the problems. By doing so, he created a framework for successful change, but he did not create a good methodology, particularly for change novices who don't have the background that we have about what the theory and practice of organizational change is. The resistance models are interesting, but they're really not very good proactive because, again, they identify generally what happens when the problems occur with a poorly executed change initiative or a change framework not being employed properly. Diagnostic models are also very interesting in that they explain where the problems are, but rarely are they used for sense making, if at all. Too often, they're really ignored totally, and a change objective is jumped at once a politically feasible solution is identified, regardless of what the core problem is and what comes from the model itself. There's only a couple of these, for example, it's coming out of complexity science in the Kuhn-Even model, that starts to make sense making, but for the most part, the diagnostics are jumped over in most organizations going right to a change objective. Okay. Competency models also start to lay out what people throughout the organization, where you have leaders at all levels and an ability to proactively identify areas of change going forward, those competency models are good, but it raises the question, how do we go ahead and bring up massive numbers of people into those levels of competencies that we need today? This then brings us to a question on what if we did change differently? What if we designed an organization that is built for change? What would that organization actually look like? Our old thinking is gap closure with episodic and disruptive change. New thinking, though, what if we can do routine, proactive change that is also purpose aligned? And the purpose alignment becomes critical here because we can't just turn people loose for change. If we decentralize the change process and go to distributed decision rights necessary to bring change about, there's also some necessary alignment needed to keep the whole organization from flying apart. This brings up the question of how can this be done? This brings us to the point of what are the requirements if we were to put together a change process for routine proactive change. What is necessary to tear down the bureaucracy that is controlling us and that is limiting us? The requirements for organizational change really are rather simple when you get down to thinking about the purpose of the organization. The purpose of the organization is designed to do work. The organization is not necessarily for control. So therefore, if you're going to get work done and do it in a fast, proactive way, we need to find a way in our organizations for more autonomy throughout the organization, distributed decision rights that is action-oriented across the organization. This responsiveness, though, needs to be purpose-driven so that even though you've got some distribution of decision-making and actions starting for change, how does it all tie together with some type of cross-organizational linkages, or alignment. Okay. These three components then lay a framework for what we need as an organization going forward. Autonomy that's action-oriented, responsiveness that is purposely driven, and a cross-organization alignment that rethinks our current traditional hierarchy of how we structure our organizations. Okay. This then lays the framework for our discussions tomorrow, where we're going to be talking, same time as now, about designing the organizations that are truly built for change. In that presentation, we're going to take a look at a number of organizations that are using non-traditional alternatives to structure and operational control. We're going to see what we can learn from those and then how we can generalize that learning into a more proactive way of looking at change.